Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the rest of the story. The game wasn't over, despite that interesting call. So that probably won't soften it enough, will it? I'll still get fined. Screw it. So anyway, just the kids' hospital, please. All right.
Yeah, that about sums it up, doesn't it? Welcome to our Sunday edition of Eye on the Hawks, recapping that 12-10 loss to Minnesota in the battle for the Floyd of Rosedale. First Iowa loss to Minnesota since 2014. First time they've lost at Kinnick Stadium to the Golden Gophers since 1999. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell, just like the rest of you, still trying to process forgetting a play that we all saw and experienced, and both were very fortunate, got very good angles of. Because it all starts with the punt return that wasn't. And we'll just get right into that, shall we? Here's a look at what it looked like with about 1:30 to go in the game. Cooper DeJean, hand signals, whatever. Not a lot of reaction on the Minnesota sideline to emphasize anything like that, but just one of the most incredible plays. Owen, you've done this for a while too. One of the most incredible plays I've ever seen, incredible moments, but it didn't happen.
Yep. I feel a little bit like when you're in a courtroom and the prosecution brings a piece of evidence and the judge rules that must be stricken from the record. And they say the jury must forget.
That's a great analogy.
Having
sat through a week and a half murder trial earlier this year, that's a few things were brought up. Like, nope, like we're not going to introduce that. But then there's still like it was said, it's in the ether.
The jury's like, we can't use that. We got to forget that. That's kind of the same thing here, where it's like, wait, we didn't just see the most amazing play that we've seen in the last decade.
We were just talking about this, and I don't know. Again, it's all what if, and none of this matters anymore. But if that play stands, Cooper DeJean might not be winning the Heisman, but his stock in that, I mean, his NFL stock is as high as it's already going. Like, yeah, in a season where Michael Penix is kind of running away, literally and figuratively, sometimes throwing his way to the Heisman, you're looking for also rans, and boy, the kid from Oldebolt just doing anything and everything.
This, I think, is the best angle, and I got this. I think Cooper shared it, Mitch.
So Cooper shared this in his Instagram story. Trey Peterson, who I think is a freelancer, had that shot. Like, boy, I'm not intricate in the rules. We've all learned a heck of a lot about the rule book in the last
a lot of Twitter football experts saying, like, who act like they knew what an invalid fair catch was before today. I mean, I watch a lot of college football. This gets called, like, I don't know, not even once a year. But there was one last night that didn't get called against UNC. But
it's a psychological thing. Like, Owen just drew the courtroom parallel of if the play's dead, blow it dead, I guess.
Yeah.
But letting it play through and then letting people experience this euphoric emotional high or devastating swing on if you're on the Minnesota side, and then being told didn't happen, forget. Like that's an immensely difficult thing to process because we saw it. We're right there. And now it's, nope, didn't happen, and we're just going to move on as if it didn't happen.
I certainly understand when officials let a play run itself out
Sure.
when it comes to like a fumble return or a pick six or something, but I guess I don't understand necessarily the benefit there if you're the official of being like, well, I think he did a fair catch second, but let's let this one play out and see what happens.
Because if he gets tagged, Cooper, and boy, he like hits a Heisman post too as he's getting past 87, like right around the 20 or so. If he's tackled there, does this get reviewed still?
I don't think
it doesn't hurt nearly as bad if it gets overturned, certainly.
I think if it's more than a 10-yard return, I think they still might review it because of like what Kirk said.
They were looking for the sideline.
They were looking for the sideline and then saw the other thing. And so if it got down to like the 20-yard line, I think they still review it and bring it back. If it was like a 8-yard return, I think they just say whatever and then just let it ride from there. But
I just think the spirit of the rule, which I think is for returners not to fake fair catch it to fool the defense, like that is why probably it's in there. I don't know exactly why they threw that rule in there, how long it's been a rule. But like clearly no one on Minnesota was even arguing that call after the game.
They were stone-faced. I mean, it felt like a here we go again. Like,
Yeah.
what way can happen to give us a ninth straight loss against this team? And it felt like on that sideline was this is what does it.
Yeah, cheerleaders were crying on the Minnesota sideline. I saw. I was getting a reaction shot for PJ Fleck, and he didn't know what was going on until like the very last minute. He was like going like this to his defense, like get off the field, like we got to change things up because it was going to be the kick block team or whatever. I guess not kick block. They would have gone for 2 in that situation. Iowa would have, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, probably.
Because it was a 4-point lead, and they would have had to go for 2 to get up by 6.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he was like changing out things. So I don't think he ever saw that coming.
I think the coaches knew before. I think he was waving them off and saying, "Hey, we're getting ready to play defense." Because on the broadcast I rewatched today, Kirk was getting explained to the ref before the announcers knew and before the ref, and then the other ref started moving back, and Kirk was like in complete shock at like, "What are you talking about?"
I don't think that this necessarily affects in any way. Well, I don't think it can do anything but improve Cooper's draft stock. I don't think that's necessarily the conversation.
Yeah,
because
that's
kids
on
get
the real.
drafted.
That's on the real. Yeah.
He's getting drafted, so it's like that. The overruling that doesn't necessarily shape anything. It's more so I think it was somebody I saw on Twitter today. One of our former guest analysts on Eye on the Hawks spoke about the fact that this was a legacy-defining moment for Cooper DeJean, and it's wiped off the board. He still's got, that other punt return touchdown that was incredible. He's got a lot of pick sixes under his belt, and there's still a lot of people that are going to remember that one, but it just feels tainted, and that's unfortunate for a guy like Cooper.
One thing about his dynamic play on the punt return, and he always gets compared to Tim Dwight, who was also dynamic. He had I was too young to watch Tim Dwight, so I don't have the stats in front of me. He had 4 or 6, maybe 4 one season.
He had 3 in that 97 season when he finished 7th in the Heisman.
How many of them won the game in the fourth quarter? If Coop has 2 in one season within 3 weeks, that almost outweighs the number of kicks.
It's right up there with Tate to Holloway, in my opinion. It is one of the greatest plays in the history of Iowa football, and everyone now has to deal with the psychological processing that it didn't happen. And that's a weird process to go through.
It's true. I would have said that probably is number 2 to Tate to Holloway in terms of the Kirk Ferentz era greatest finish in Iowa history. Tate to Holloway is the only other time where my jaw was on the floor, speechless for a play. I couldn't believe that happened. That happened yesterday, where I after the play was just looking around at the crowd. Did we all just see that?
Everybody from the NBC crews to the Hawk Vision and UI Athletic, everyone's just looking at each other, trying to process it happened again, except it didn't. And that's, again, you wake up today and you're in the middle of that euphoric space, and now you're being told it didn't exist. It's trippy. It's very almost out of body of just no, that didn't happen. But I was there. I saw it happen.
Though.
It's wild how calm Cooper is in those moments too. I had that shot where he's telling the crowd to calm down and has no emotion on his face. He's a Terminator. It's wild. And again, that's whether it counts or not. That's legacy defining. Mike, you've had this statement up from Tim O'Day for a while. If you want to just give that a read.
Yeah, let's just do this. This is, I just think we have to go through it. Here's what the official said. I believe it was Scott talked to him, Scott Docterman. Let's start with the definitions that surround the play. With regard to it, there are valued and invalid signals that can be given during any kick play. An invalid signal is any waving motion by a receiving team member that happens throughout the kick down. That's the first piece of information you have to apply. The second piece is that from Rule 6 is that any catch or recovery of a kick after an invalid signal is given causes the ball to become dead upon recovery or catch. That's the basis that they made after seeing the play. Now going back to the top of the play, the receiver makes a pointing gesture with his right hand and he makes multiple waving gestures with his left hand. If you look at the video, you'll see that the waving motion of the left hand constitutes an invalid fair catch signal. So when the receiving team recovers the ball, it becomes dead. So that is a reviewable element of the game. We let the play run out, and then we went to review shows with indisputable evidence that there was a waving motion with the left hand, and that is when these rules are applied. It's legal to point, but any waving motion of the hands during a kick is considered an invalid signal. And I don't want to call anyone, they can't find me, but to say that, so we let the play run out, the refs did not think it was during the play, and I'm going to not my grave thinking that.
Again, the review, according to Kirk at the presser, was they went to see if he stepped out of bounds. He didn't, and in the process of looking at that, and I believe he if I'm understanding correctly, said it was kind of the league offices out in Pittsburgh or whoever's doing the review there was like, so he's in bounds, but this. So it's a very, again, we're drawing all sorts of like legal parallels. Like it's just, we weren't looking for this, but we found this, and it's wild.
It's true, and I think that correct me if I'm wrong. Are college and NFL the same in that all scoring and turnover plays are reviewed no matter what?
I don't believe that's the case in NCAA. I know it is in NFL. I'm not sure if that's 100%,
I don't know.
But that was the theory out there too of like, if he does, and we talked about that a little bit too of just, well, if he doesn't score, do they look at it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they still do just because it was close to the sideline.
Yeah, that probably gets looked at, but so it might have been a move.
So here's what I guess I don't understand, and maybe you guys can help me out with this rule when it comes to the fair catch thing. When they said valued, was that the correct word? Not valid?
That's what he said, valued. I don't know if he misspoke or if he meant valued.
It might have been
So
transcribed wrong.
let's just say valid or invalid. So both a valid or invalid fair catch signal make it a fair catch? Is that what I'm understanding?
I've never heard the term invalid fair catch before 16 hours ago.
I didn't either. And,
Like, what does that mean? Like, what's the difference then? If both make it a fair catch, why are there two different types of fair catch signal?
Because Kirk even pointed, and we might have these in sound bites, we'll get to those too, that they talk to officials before every game, and this is fair catch. I mean, anybody could, and you don't do it with your left hand. As Cooper said, he's never called a fair catch with his left hand.
Yeah.
So it's always this. You see guys do this on punt returns all the time. I don't know the difference between invalid. I literally don't know if it's an arm angle type thing. Like, is this invalid? This is valid. I don't know. It's what a mess, man. What a mess.
I don't think that Kirk said anything that's finable, unfortunately.
Yeah, I saw a headline where it said Kirk Ferentz blasts officials. I'm like, he was just kind of. I mean, you saw him kind of almost smiling because it's like, what do you do? He was asked a couple times, like, what do you say to your team? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say? All you can do is really laugh because it's just an unimaginable scenario.
There were a few times where he called it a peculiar call.
Peculiar, interesting.
But I'm like, dude, Kirk, if you really want to send some money to the Children's Hospital, let's have it, man.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
That's
let's
where
go
the
scorched earth, baby.
You guys want to hear from Kirk? I got about 2 minutes.
Let's get to Kirk. We've been talking for a while. Here he is.
So I'll start out by saying whatever I do say, hopefully if the Big Ten deems it necessary to find me, hopefully they'll maybe find in their hearts to send it to a good cause, like the Children's Hospital would be a good place to start. But it was a peculiar game, and the fact that we had 6 replays today, I can't remember a game, maybe we've had some with that amount. That's interesting. And really the last play is just, it's a little bit tough. So had the target on the kickoff. That's a first for me. I'm not saying making any judgment on that, but the last one was just, it's hard to take that one. It really is on a couple levels. So first of all, I don't know how to coach our guys because we cover that in pregame with the officials each and every time about fair catch procedure, above the head, wave. We also cover point to the ground for an errant kick, which there were several of those today. So that's something we've covered with every crew that comes through. Pretty standard procedure, I would imagine. And, so it was interesting, the final analysis of that play. And probably the most peculiar part to me is that, as I understand it, at least the initial replay was to find out if he was in or out of bounds, if Cooper stepped out of bounds, which clearly he didn't. And I appreciate the replay on that. That's fine, do their homework, make sure they're correct on that. But then somehow we went from there to a whole different series of topics, and it's really hard to accept the explanation that we got. And I guess, I'm still not fuzzy. Maybe I slept through the meeting when they covered that, but I'm still not sure who makes the final decision. I know we go to Pittsburgh for analysis, and, my theory there is the more people get involved, probably the more screwed up things are. So if it was up to me, if anybody wanted my opinion, it ought to go back to the official who's on the field talking to the coaches. He should have the final say. Well, again, I thought it started was the inbounds, out of bounds, and we went from there to pointing, which is legal because, errant punt. And then I was told that he was waving, and what they tell us in pregame is a wave is up here above the head. And most people, when they run, their arms do wave. So if you looked at the video, it looked like he was naturally running to the football and then just made a great play, one of the best ones I've ever seen. So that part's the hardest part, is that, an unbelievable effort gets, yanked off the board.
And Cooper described it as, man, credit to Coop. He was the first one at the podium yesterday. A lot of emotion in his voice. It's so strange to have to ask a kid of like, what were you doing with your arm? And then him trying to explain, he painted it as like trying to balance himself, which kind of you see like guys like as they're running kind of do a wind-up type thing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think he said that too. It was kind of
winding up.
We got that. If you want to hear that as well, we can.
Yeah,
do
let's
that.
go to Coop. We've heard enough from us. Let's hear from the guys.
Never call for fair catch with my left hand ever. It's kind of just like keeping my balance, I guess, trying to run to the ball, but it happens. Frustrating, but got to move on. No, I've never had a problem with that before. It didn't even look like I didn't think I got it above my head at least. I was just kind of like winding myself to turn to get the ball. So yeah, it's tough.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm still kind of in shock of what all happened. It's frustrating for this team. We just kept fighting through the end of the game. Seems like it was all just taken away in that one play.
Did you notice any Minnesota defenders stopping or anything as a result of what you
No,
did?
I assumed they'd blow the whistle if it was a fair catch. I didn't hear a whistle though, so I just kept going. Yeah.
Just got you, man. Just got you. Somebody pointed out it was reminiscent, I think, because it was kind of the left to right again, of that big touchdown run he had to win the state title. It felt like the same trajectory.
Yes,
I was talking to him a
that's
couple
true.
weeks ago after the Michigan State game, and I think we aired it on the pod of just like him being able to hear like the coops in the background and what plays he remembers from his career that brought about that kind of where he can almost feel the energy of the crowd going, and he brought up the state title game in that run. That was probably his all-time best play, even going back to high school. It doesn't count, but man, that's up there. That was like you said, that's a legendary play. That's up there with pick a Tim Dwight one. That's Tim's returns always like blend together. But it's just, man, it's wild.
Yeah, I think that goes down as I'm not as much of a Hawkeye historian as so many people out there, but if it stands, I say number 2 all-time finish to a game behind Tate Holloway.
The only one I was thinking of before was 7 got 6.
I mean,
Michigan State.
it's in that same lexicon. I don't know if you
obviously
you
we're
can rank
u-
them because they're all their own thing, but it's just like
We're a younger crowd, so anything in the 80s, obviously we haven't.
yeah, Rob Howland hitting the field goal obviously is huge. Any of those
10 to 12, that
walk-off
one was,
field
wasn't
goals,
it?
Yeah. Daniel Murray, who we talked to earlier. I mean, but it's just it's in there. It's not because invalid. No fine for Kirk as of yet. I don't know what'll happen with that. Who knows? Hopefully, as he said, it goes to a good cause. That's the.
I don't know what fine money goes to in the Big Ten. That's a
I
good
don't know
question.
either.
Let's do an investigative report. I'm just kidding.
For now, though, we'll move on with the rest of the game after these words from our sponsors.
Bauman's has been selling quality clothing for over 100 years. We carry a wide selection of men's and women's clothing. We recently expanded to offer a great selection of shoes and accessories. We have the area's best selection of both big and tall and can outfit anyone from the farm to the office to a casual night on the town. Bauman's is a proud family-owned business, and we're excited to continue the tradition of quality clothing and unmatched customer service since 1909. Visit us for all your clothing needs.
So, if Cooper's punt return stands, just to put a bow on this becomes another quintessential Iowa-style win. 12 yards in the second half on offense, no big deal. You just play
2 yards in the
was
second
it whatever
half.
it was.
Yeah.
Not a lot of offensive yards in the second half. Yada yada yada. It just becomes that classic Iowa way. But of course, when that doesn't happen and you lose, to paraphrase Seth Rogen in Step Brothers, okay, now the tuxedo seemed a little messed up. The offense, 212, -29, whatever it may be, was not productive. Again, a great opening drive to get that field goal. boy, what if it's a touchdown? We'll play the what if game forever. But Deacon Hill in start number 3 for Iowa after stepping in against Michigan State. 10 of 28, 116 yards. The pick late to Justin Wally to seal it for the Gophers. Had the Deke sneak. We saw a few of those throughout the day. Seemed to be a pretty good play. So, again, the completion percentage there. This 18 incompletions, obviously the one goes to the Gophers. There were a mix of
some drops.
Drops again, threw a few behind Nico. There was one, at least one to Deontay that was thrown behind. Again, that opening drive, though, we've got some video if we wanted to get that. We'll talk about that in a bit. But, of course, 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles. Minnesota blitzed pretty well. But let's first get to Kirk and Deacon and just their evaluation of the offensive situation as Deacon, QB2, QB1, still trying to put everything together.
Clearly, a lot of things we need to do better, and top of the list is just ball security. You can't win football games turning over 3 times. And, 2 of those directly tied to 6 points that they got. So that's first and foremost. That'll never change. And then just, the opportunities we did have, we weren't able to capitalize, and that's certainly unfortunate. So
unexcusable. I got to hold on to the ball whether a guy's hitting me or not. I got to hold on to the ball. So that one's on me. No one else. I got to eat that one.
Then the interception, walk me through what you saw there.
Yeah, I was just trying to get to the sticks. Had Nico, just missed on it. Just missed. Wish I could have it back, but can't.
Is there a worse way that we could go into the bye week?
It's brutal. We'll talk about that in a bit, too, of just that vibe. But this was that opening drive. I mean, that's an awesome play. Great catch from Deontay. But that's for him to roll out the way he did and do that, that's as good a throw he's made as a Hawkeye, right up there with the couple tosses to Eric All. But then, again, the turnover issues, just a loaf of bread out there that got knocked out of his hands, recovered by Minnesota. This next play I put in, because this is a great way that he handles the blitz here, and ends up getting the PI in the end zone. But that's an awesome step up. You fire a ball in. And
that reminded me of Nate Stanley, that step up.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reminiscent stuff there, but that ended up setting the Deke sneak touchdown that I believe we have here. I mean, it took 4 tries, but and awesome to get that play for him. He was hyped up, obviously. But then again, there was another fumble in there. Just a few rough throws. This was on the final drive. I mean, that's the worst way to start that final drive. Already trying to readjust after the energy swing, and then Justin Wally, who's pretty darn good cornerback there. I thought in the moment he was going for Seth because Seth was over on the sideline as well. But yeah, just kind of put it up there, and so that got people talking yet again. I don't know what it was like on Twitter. There was just so much reaction to the Cooper play that I'm not sure if it was out there. But Kirk was asked once again about possibility of Joey Labus being in there, what the quarterback situation was. Kirk really got in depth with the decision or no decision on sticking with Deke going in.
Yeah, so on that topic, I'll just say this. Okay, for 25 years, we watch guys in practice. We evaluate what they do in practice. And then moving forward, and then, certainly game performance is a big part of it. But, if it's close, neck and neck, that type of thing, then you rotate guys in and take a look at them. But, I don't think we're insane. Like, you go with what you see in practice and try to make the best decisions at all positions, not just quarterback. Obviously, quarterback's the one that attracts the attention. But, I'm just standing here right now, and we'll see what next week brings. But I'm trying to think of the history since I've been here, how many, we had whatever it would have been, 8 back and forth, with 2 guys. Then CJ and Jake went back and forth a little bit. But typically, there's a clear 1, a clear 2. And I'm not saying that in a demeaning way to the guy that's 2, but it's what it is. And you kind of go with it from there.
So there it is. I for one, I agree Deacon's probably the best guy. I know we haven't seen a ton of Joey. But those 2 situations you brought up where it was in 08, Jake Christensen, Ricky Stanzi kind of switched starts for a while, and then it became obvious.
Yeah.
It's 15 years ago, but I remember thinking Ricky's kind of the guy.
Hands down.
And then, in 14, it was Jake Rudock and C.J. Beathard, and again, maybe we mentioned this on Wednesday, that Cade McNamara's 2021 leading Michigan to a Big Ten championship. Those numbers are almost identical to Jake Rudock in 2014 at Iowa. Jake got pretty much run out of town, but it also worked out for all parties. I can't remember many examples, if there are any, of a backup quarterback at Iowa leaving, going to an equal or better program, and showing definitively that they were better than the starter.
So that's taken Jake off the table when he went to Michigan and won
he
like
had a great
good
year.
season.
But again, like
but it's
CJ
Michigan.
It was kind of everybody. It
Yeah,
worked out for
I'm not
everybody.
questioning that decision.
Yeah.
Obviously, CJ was the better quarterback for
The examples I can think of are Ryan Boyle, who was a stud at Dowling, transferred to Indiana State. I think he'd been moved to wide receiver for a little bit, going into 15 or 16. Goes to Indiana State. He's MVC Newcomer of the Year. He was, that kid was going to be successful at whatever position he went and played. Nick Shimonek, or I think Shimonek, was a good recruit. He ended up going to Texas Tech, and I think had a decent stretch with the Red Raiders. Derek Willis was a wide receiver that transferred from Iowa there too, and did well. Cody Sokol is probably the biggest example of a guy who went and found a really good season at Louisiana Tech. After he's the guy who was the starting quarterback in NCAA football 14 video
Yep.
game out of overall rating. And what was
QB number 19, you mean?
QB number 19, excuse me. Yeah. He went for 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns at Louisiana Tech, and he was 15 or 16. He was a stud, and I think he might have gotten to some NFL camps. But more often than not, it feels like the best guys out there, and that they're not it was brought up last year, the what's the upside thing, and then, we've already been through the rigmarole of trying to respectfully point out. Kirk did that earlier this week too, of just hey, maybe we see why the guy who's out there, maybe not everybody's on board with, is the guy who's out there. Which that's a whole can of worms about talking about, well, what's the state of the recruiting the position and everything. But it's just a tough spot right now.
That's the devil's advocate.
Sure.
Obviously you could say what's the upside, and I don't know what I think about this offense, but I almost say what's the downside of just making a switch, because, I know it's only been 3 games, but this team's contending for a division title.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say that Deacons play the toughest defenses in the Big Ten, Purdue, Michigan State, Minnesota. Minnesota's probably the best one out of the 3, but I still wouldn't say they're anywhere close to the top of the,
And Minnesota's defense coming off a bye week of rest, and Minnesota's got the 3 losses, and those are to Michigan, who might be the best team in the country and has a pretty good offense themselves that bruises and batters, and they played North Carolina, who's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Drake May, and so they
lost to Virginia last night. Not just a side note, that's shocking.
Yeah, which is
shocking
wild.
loss.
Yeah, I think
Virginia is not that good.
Yeah, we'll get our ACC podcast up next year.
One of the underlying big picture debates too, and I think Lystico and Doctorman had a good conversation about it, is the offense obviously not good the past 3 years.
Just not productive. Yeah.
Not productive. And is it a scheme thing? Is it a recruiting thing because none of these quarterbacks develop? Is it a coaching thing where, it could be all of the above, where they're not developing any quarterbacks. And like you said, though, no quarterbacks leaving, going to a place, and then being a star. So is it swings on recruiting? Some of these quarterbacks have 4 stars, but not every 4-star is, a good college quarterback. It just makes you wonder, what can change this? Not this season, because we were talking before, Mitch, I don't think the offense is changing much this season for the better. But long term, how do you fix this problem? Because if they had an average offense, I still think they lose to Penn State, but they could be a top 15 team, But I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Owen.
I feel like from the time that Deacon took over, I was like, yeah, let's let this guy run it out through the end of the season. And I feel like each week that I see him, I grow a little bit more and more expecting him to stay in there as a starter less and less maybe. Because I think that last week I said this guy's still going to get a few more chances to go out there and get reps before they even think about going to somebody else. He is not getting better. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's getting worse, but I mean, there's nothing out there that I've seen out of him that's like, boy, DeJean's really progressing in a positive direction, and he's really improving and doing well. Boy, he has some potential, I think, and we like the guy a lot, but he is not doing well at quarterback. And I don't know if Joe Labus would do any better. I don't want to turn this into, like, again, the Petrus Padilla conversation, and then Padilla comes in and stinks up the joint. But I mean, gosh, I feel like at this point I'm of the mindset where, I think that they'll give DeJean the start at Northwestern. I think they'll give him the start against Rutgers no matter what. But if this continues and he continues to just, like, not show any signs of improvement, it's like those last 2 regular season games, maybe try something else out, because the upside, if you will, to coin a phrase, might be figuring out things for next year, because if Cade is back next year, and if DeJean is back on the roster, and if Joe is back on the roster, they do need to figure out who's our number 2 for next season. And so they would like to maybe see some reps as starter for the guy who is going to be competing for that number 2 spot. So I would say going into the final, maybe couple games of the season, that would be the upside, is to at least get a look ahead at what we might have in store backing up Cade McNamara next season.
It's difficult to do that when you're looking at a Big Ten West title. If they were 3-3 or 3-4.
Yeah, and that's why I say that, like, that's why I think they'll give them a couple more games, so that, like, if again it gets to the point where it's like, boy, we're not in contention for a Big Ten West title anymore, then we might need to make a change. But if they win the next couple games, then got to keep DeJean in there.
Yeah.
I still feel like, and I think we talked about this in the preseason one. I hate to bring up Brian. Brian's OC had success with Nate Stanley at quarterback. These last 3 years now, I believe it is, he's the quarterback's coach as well. I think that needs to change.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. And I predicted in the preseason maybe that's Bud Meyer's gig at some point. I thought that would be for this season, but that's just, that feels like a big thing, far more than
I agree with that, yeah.
Spot. I think that's a big deal, because I think O'Keefe was quarterback's coach for Stanley, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think he was for the first year too, when in 2021, because O'Keefe was still on the staff, because I saw him in the hotel in Nebraska.
That to me is a big thing too. Again, there's a whole other discussion about recruiting and development and whatnot, but that still to me feels like.
It's weird for an offensive line to be the quarterback's offensive lineman.
And again, like, there are position coaches that switch. Abdul Hodge was a linebacker,
Sure.
and he's coaching tight ends and has done pretty darn well with that, especially all things considered. That always feels like one of those positions, though, that, like, you needed a former quarterback there, or I think maybe like a former wide receiver. Maybe that sometimes happens, but, like, it's just such a unique spot, and man, that's not the catalyst and the pin for everything, but, like, just one of those, when you're looking for answers, that's one of the spots you glance over and wonder. We'll take another break here quick. We'll get into what this bye week's going to be like, and put a ribbon on all this and try to flush and move forward right after this.
Better sleep means better morning. Start your morning waking up on a Restonic mattress. At Corcoran Furniture, we are Delaware County's largest Restonic mattress dealer. We have great prices on Ashley Furniture and the largest selection of Restonic mattresses, featuring the marvelous middle, giving you more support where you need it so you can sleep soundly. And it's made for you right here in Iowa. So if it's a crossword, coffee, or the morning news, let Corcoran Furniture help you start your morning off right. Visit Corcoran Furniture in Manchester or shop online at corcoranfurnituremanchester.com.
Before we get to the bye, let's just point this out, that Minnesota out-Iowa'd Iowa in this game. Iowa gets that win in Wisconsin by not turning the ball over and running the ball well. Minnesota gets this win at Iowa, forget about the punt return, by not turning the ball over and running the ball well. We kind of said these are two teams that are two sides of the same coin that want to do that kind of thing, and when it came down to it, Iowa turns it over 3 times, doesn't run the ball well at all. Minnesota does it. Kaliak-Manis didn't have to do a whole lot, made a couple really nice throws when he needed to, but, I mean, that's Minnesota won messy. It won in a way that Iowa likes to win theirs, and that was, if the punt return counts. That's Iowa out Minnesotaing Minnesota, who's trying to out Iowa. It's a big.
Ethan Kelly, Mana stats mirrored Deacon Hill's minus the interception, 10 for 25, 126, he had 10 more yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
That long one.
Yeah.
That set up, I think, that final go-ahead field goal or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it was. We got what was advertised. It just, when you get in the weeds, it's a weird one. But yeah, Minnesota did what Iowa did in Madison last week, and that's why they're the proud owners of a very old bronze pig. So we do go into the bye week for Iowa. It couldn't have come at a better time, at least from a physical health standpoint. I think we can talk about whether or not having time to stew on this is another situation. They're in the middle of their 24-hour flush today, and that's a tough one in the film room today for sure, to just watch things that did go well and a play that doesn't exist anymore. But boy, that defense, Logan Lee limped off at one point. Jay Higgins, I felt like was really in a tough spot at the end. Cooper had a wrist thing in the third quarter I got a shot of where I don't know if he jammed a finger or something with his hand. Obviously, Y.A. Black had a strap on his shoulder the whole game. Xavier Wampa had a cast on his hand coming in. I mean, this team is beat up. Joe Evans was questionable last week, played this week, and Joe was asked just about the bye week and getting healthy and also going into it off a moment like this.
I'm not going to ever be a guy to, for me, comment really on my health, If I'm out there, I'm out there. I'm not going to be the one to make excuses, but having the bye week definitely is going to help just to kind of get guys healthy again and, be ready to go for the next 4 weeks.
He did talk, though, of just would you want to play this upcoming Saturday just to help with the cleanse? Like, you have to move on. I don't know what you guys think of that, of just you need the time to rest up, but boy, you'd love something new to prep for right now, starting tomorrow or even today. It's just a tough spot.
Going back to just talking about this being the worst way to go into a bye week, it just makes it that much harder to flush a loss like that when you have 2 weeks now to stew on it. Boy, I mean, an exciting win would be a great way to do it. Even if this was Penn State and they got, just totally dominated going into a bye week, it's like, all right, we got a lot of things to work on and this will be a good chance to get things cleaned up. But just having a really sickening feeling going into a bye week is a tough way to have to sit on that for the next 2 weeks. And I'm curious to see how they respond. And I don't know. The pessimist in me thinks that this could be like a beginning of a tough stretch here for Iowa. I feel like it's certainly possible that could stick with them and they lose 3 of their last 4 games, honestly, over the next few weeks, just because Minnesota got them figured out pretty well. Iowa for the first time all season yesterday had a fully healthy stable of running backs, and they got their butts kicked in the running game. They could not do anything in the running game. And it's like Minnesota really did something well against them in pretty much every facet of the game, and I think that's given the final 4 opponents for Iowa something to look at moving forward for what they can do to shut Iowa down defensively and or offensively or special teams. And I don't know. It gives me weird feelings going into the bye week, just like, boy, how well is this team going to bounce back from that, go into that Northwestern game in a couple weeks at Wrigley Field?
Yeah, the running game's interesting. I don't know if you guys agree with what I saw because I was in the stands as a fan yesterday. It seemed like Minnesota, and they put 7-8 guys in the box. It looks like Iowa, scheme-wise, didn't try and do anything outside. They were running in between the tackles. And just when they know that it's going to happen, and I know there's only so many plays you can do. Like that first drive, you come out, throw 1 first down, great throw to Deontay, get them off their heels, And obviously, you have to keep executing, and that wasn't happening, so they wanted to lean on the run game. But I always wonder, and that write-up from Doctorman a few weeks ago where it's like, if you're in this formation, Iowa 75% of the time does this, That just tells them, hey, and Kirk talked about the run blitz, we're all there all day. And some of the time, on the last drive, that first sack that they got DeJean to on 1st and 10, like it was 5-on-6 in favor of Iowa. They had 5. They rushed 5. They did a stunt, and LeSean was back there, and they got to him within like 2 seconds. So like that's not DeJean's fault. I mean, obviously, you can't be expected to get rid of the ball in a second. You know.
Yeah, you had kind of just projected that in our previous podcast where you were like, if I'm Minnesota, I just go ahead and stack the box and just like say, hey, beat me with your quarterback, make him throw downfield and see if he can do it. And obviously DeJean could not do that and has not shown any ability to do that over his time as a starter. And so, again, I think that that's what teams are going to do to these guys moving forward. They're going to stack the box, totally eliminate the run game, and see if DeJean shows any sort of progression as a quarterback.
Yeah, the only time I didn't see them stack is when, they went in 5 wide and shotgun, then they brought in their nickel package and had 4 defensive linemen with a linebacker over. But I didn't get to rewatch the full game. I only watched like bits and pieces.
The reason that DeJean sneak worked so well was because I think they tried to run 2 3rd-and-1 plays with Jazz running up the middle, and he just got totally pushed backwards. And so they were like, okay, let's try it with DeJean. I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward because, that's a great 3rd-and-1 play. Use your wide-bodied quarterback as a guy just as a battering ram to get you 1 yard when you need to, and worked well for him. And so I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward.
I think a lot of that is also we've talked about Iowa. When Iowa scores early and they kind of know what the game's going to be and they know it's going to be a lot of punts and the wind's all over the place. I mean, B.J. Fleck burned 2 timeouts in the first quarter to make sure he kept the win as long as he could. I mean, it was going to be the time of game it is. Not saying Iowa's just trying to run it and punt it back as quick as they can, but that's also, I mean, when they get the lead and they feel like their scheme and formula is going to work, they're just going to pound it inside and get rid of it and try to play the field position game. And again, there are days when it works to perfection, and there's days that it doesn't. And when it works, it's I think you called it the dark magic of Iowa football. Like, hey, like it was messy and there's not a lot of yardage, but hey, like defense and special teams pulled up. Torrey had another awesome day.
That punt.
He had a perfect one that Cooper downed like right at the 1, and it's just like that's art. Like it's an art installation.
There was a time when he was averaging 52 yards a punt, I think, yesterday. I think maybe his last 2 dropped him down. I mean, it ended up at like 49 yards a punt or something. But another 9 punts yesterday. After the Northwestern game, he will be within maybe a game of reaching the all-time total punts record for the University of Iowa. So
there was a minute after I thought in the minute time frame where I thought Cooper's punt would have sealed the win for Iowa. I was planning on coming here, and instead of having a hot shot from Kirk off the top, I was going to play Jesse from Breaking Bad. You can't stop getting away with this.
I mean, that's been used a few times now to describe Iowa, and we talked about it after Penn State, and obviously that's a very different game and a very different loss. But hey, when it works, that's the Iowa way, and it's awesome. And again, when it doesn't, the tuxedos don't look that great all of a sudden for the Doback brothers. Let's recap the picks because I'm sure that's just full of sunshine and rainbows and all sorts of good vibes.
Actually, Owen had a really good week.
Did he?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. He went 5-1.
Nice.
Hello.
Yep. Only one you missed was Penn State. We all missed on that one, and kind of surprising, but not when you really think about it.
Ohio State is Michigan's maybe head and shoulders above everybody else, but that's a really nice win.
What was the final score of that one? What ended up being the spread?
20-12.
Yeah.
Close.
And I feel like an idiot picking Michigan State. I thought college football would college football, but it didn't college football.
It's a wild one there.
Yikes! Yeah.
Oh, Northwestern.
Northwestern, yeah. Played it a little close at Lincoln, and Wisconsin made a late. I heard that Locke threw a late touchdown to a lineman. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I know that. Man, that was one of the big takeaways from last week's game. Is that that kid's going to be okay. I've learned the lesson that Case and Ferentz has tried to teach us so many times. Just can't trust Illinois.
They were winning for a majority of the game when I was checking.
Felt good about it.
And it was like 21-7 going into the 4th quarter, I think.
And Indiana gave Rutgers a nice little fight there too. But Rutgers,
pulled it out.
That's going to be an interesting one to coin a phrase from Kirk coming up in a couple weeks.
Look upon my works, all ye mighty, and despair. Owen and Mike tied atop the leaderboard, 23-23.
You know, I would have been fine if it wasn't for week 1. Not fine, but better.
Not bad.
All right. Well, so this week, and we need to figure this out. We're going to plan live on here. There will be player availability, players that we don't normally get on Tuesdays. we're going to get them on Wednesday this week. Usually during the bye week is when coordinators are available, Phil Parker and Brian Ferentz. We were told after the post game yesterday, coordinators will be available later during this season. We've had Phil on a Zoom, I think maybe a month ago. Haven't talked to Brian since media day, so.
Things that make you go,
I wonder why.
And I was trying to think who we haven't talked to that we usually see on the field player-wise. I think like Rusty Feth, I'm not sure if he's been out there. Jennings Dunker was on at 1 Tuesday. Nick DeJean's been at 1 or 2. Kyler Fisher was at 1 early. I don't know if there's like if Hayden Large could be there Wednesday, something like that.
Yeah.
Ethan Herkett maybe. Haven't seen Ethan out there. YA hasn't been out there. Xavier's been at availability at a time or two. But we'll have fresh new faces Wednesday, I suppose, and see how everybody's doing. But
Have we talked to Aaron Graves on a Tuesday?
we haven't talked to Aaron Graves either. He had a
He's progressing really well.
Yeah,
He's
Joe,
looking good.
Joe Evans had an awesome day of pressures, and I think had at least 1 sack, if not 2. Graves had
was it Evans that almost got to Kaliak Manis in the end zone, or was that
that was Herkett.
Herkett? Okay, yeah,
That was Herkett.
I was
Again, just like
close.
Yeah.
But when you
Seb had another huge dude. He just knocks people, or he wraps them up and doesn't let them go. He's just
when you rely on that, though, sometimes you don't get it. Those are tough plays to make, and I'm not faulting the defense at all because they played tough. I mean, outside of that big play, I think they were in man. They usually don't play man, and
They're the only reason I was where they
crossing
are
route.
right now.
Yep.
do not.
And special
disparage
teams.
Torrey
Oh, yeah.
And
Taylor,
special teams.
Torrey Taylor.
Boy, but that's how I was going. So we'll figure out. Do we record Wednesday then? We're really figuring this out live on.
Yeah, probably.
yeah,
we'll
I still say we record Wednesday, and
We
then
don't have times or anything. We'll figure it out. I got to figure out my schedule this week.
yeah,
Usually
that's what we're doing after this.
Yeah, we'll figure that all out. So thanks for being part of this meeting, everybody who's watching this and listening after the fact. We'll figure out and we'll get the word out. But thanks to everybody for tuning in, being part of this, our version of the 24-hour rule. We'll look ahead to the bye week, and then we'll start looking ahead to Wrigley at some point. We'll also recap some of our preseason predictions with our midweek podcast. So for Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. We're all getting through this together, folks. We'll see you on the next edition of Eye on the Hawks.